NASENI Window. NASENI Window. NASENI Window.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the NASENI Window Podcast. I am Halima Haruna-Ginsel, your host. We're thrilled by all the support we received on our maiden edition. Thank you very much. Today we'll be discussing the transformative journey of NASENI under its new leadership. But before we go into that, please do follow us on all our social media platforms at NASENI HQ and our website www.naseni.gov.ng, and please share this podcast with your friends to join in on the conversation. Once again, I'm your host Halima Haruna-Ginsel, and with me today is
Comrade Al-Hassan Nasser. Well, yes, Halima, in today's episode, we're going to look at how NASENI has fared in the last 6 months, particularly in the areas of science, engineering, and innovation, under the able leadership of our purposeful leader, Mr. Khalid Suleiman Halilu,
Yes.
the Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the National Agency for Science and Engineering.
So for the case of emphasis, the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure was established in 1992 with the crucial mandate to foster homegrown industrialization by developing the necessary science and engineering infrastructure. With 11 development institutes spread out across the nation, NASENI is in the forefront of driving innovation and progress in Nigeria.
Yes, these institutes, each with its unique tasks, are the backbone of the NASENI's effort to propel Nigeria's technological advancement.
Yes, the institutes are definitely our backbone. But reflecting on my years at NASENI, I've witnessed firsthand a remarkable evolution within the organization. I'm sure you have witnessed that as well. There's been like a notable paradigm shift lately, touching every aspect of our operations, from our culture, our strategies, and beyond. So today we have a special guest who's been instrumental in driving these changes. No better person to dissect this topic with than engineer Anas Balarabe Yazid, an engineer, entrepreneur, winner of the prestigious British Council Alumni Awards. He currently serves as the SA, Special Assistant to the EVC on Science and Engineering Commercialization, a pivotal role in shaping NASENI's innovation landscape.
Yes, thank you very much, Engineer Anas, and thanks for being part of this episode.
Yes, so let's start off with this, Engineer Anas. What was your first impression of NASENI? Did you hear of it before your appointment? And what were your initial thoughts? But now that you're part of the organization, how have those perceptions, evolved?
Okay, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. So I think previously, before we joined NASENI, the only thing that I knew about NASENI is around the NCL, so the solar, NASENI Solar Limited, because I was involved in renewable energy, so we're looking for local producer of solar panels. That's how I got to know about NASENI for the first time. Apart from that, I only know about NASENI through friends that work at NASENI or some people doing some projects at NASENI. But I think after my boss, the new EVC, Mr. Halu took over, and then he brought me on board, and we started having those management briefings, and we started receiving briefings from MDs and the top management. At a point when we're receiving all those briefings from institutes, I paused and I told the EVC that I think the person or people that design NASENI are actually geniuses, because it's actually a very good plan. You have institutes touching almost every sector of the economy, which could support light manufacturing, and you have institutes that do prototypes, design, advanced manufacturing, and then you have institutes that handle marketing. So you have the linkage office in Lagos. So I thought it was a very good plan to help Nigeria transition into a more industrialized country. And ever since AVC started working, I've started seeing most of those initial thoughts, the people that design NASENI, actually coming into reality. And I think it's a really wonderful experience seeing that transformation.
Now, let's start from the staff, which, as the says do, the strength of any organization lies in its people. What do you have in particular to say that the Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of NASENI has implemented as a staff welfare package or as a means of propelling or motivating the staff for work?
I think once the EVC took over, a lot of the complaints we received from a lot of people, because we're just taking feedback and just getting people to advise us, both within NASENI and outside NASENI, one thing they keep saying is, please take care of welfare, right? Because you need to have motivated staff, and so far the staff are not as motivated as they're supposed to be. So the first thing that the EVC did was to set up a welfare committee, and this did not involve the top management staff. It was the lower cadre staff, because that's where you have the most problem. So he gave them the mandate to go and come back with recommendations of what he could do to improve their welfare. They have had several meetings and they came back with recommendations. And I think as of last year, not even this year, when we took stock, about 90% of those recommendations have been implemented. Some of those recommendations include backlog of salaries, backlog of allowances, regularization of promotions, regularization of calendar, really giving allowances because of the high cost of living to support that, and most importantly, getting people to work, getting them to be given assignments, to be put on projects. And that's very motivating for them to get their allowances, but be also to be able to do work, contribute to their quota to the agency. And these are just a few things that I on top of my head, but I think there's several policies that have been implemented by the EVC that I think has really motivated staff. I think we have a highly motivated staff right now.
Yes, and I think I speak for all the NASENI staff that we are highly motivated. Yeah, another notable development in NASENI's product lineup is, NASENI's products entering the market, with a focus on renewable energy. So is that a coincidence? Because we'll be seeing solar this, solar that. Is that a coincidence? Was it intentional?
Yes, I think it's intentional, because one of the key aspects of the Renewed Hope agenda under our president is really to deliver energy, especially to underserved and unserved areas in Nigeria, because energy is tied to poverty. So you have energy poverty. So when people don't have access to energy, it means when they can't cook, they can't move, and they can't farm. Everything revolves around energy. And if you continue to rely on supply of energy from the oil and gas industry in Nigeria, it has not proven to be very effective. So it is a very important need to switch to renewable sources, which are highly abundant in Nigeria: solar, biomass, wind. So we're seeing things around renewable cookstoves, solar irrigation pumps, biogas plants, biomethanol plants, a lot of different batteries. So it is quite intentional, because it really ties into everything else. It improves the cost of living and reduces poverty. But I think what it's more intentional, I think, is the focus really on agriculture, because most of our projects are revolved around agriculture. And that's because of the importance of food security, especially to the president. So you do have agricultural projects, but then you need to have energy to support the agricultural projects. And that's why those two kind of go together. And it's difficult to know which one comes first. It's like the egg and chicken situation.
That's good. I think in sometimes there was an agreement between NASENI and Indonesia. And recently, I think some set of engineers were moved to Indonesia for training on a particular type of fertilizer. I don't know if you have anything to say concerning that.
I think it's one of the most exciting projects that I'm really, very grateful to be part of, because we went to Indonesia and we went to inspect this amazing technology that was developed by Hassan Saputra. So essentially, the technology is around putting a lot of nutrients back into the soil, right, and trying to substitute chemical fertilizers and move to organic fertilizer sources, which we all know is much more healthier for people, for us. So he developed this amazing technology where you could produce this fertilizer using coal. I was skeptical at the beginning, but when I went and saw it, and I thought this is actually quite genius. So we have, in collaboration with the Indonesians, is to transfer that technology and that know-how to produce that type of fertilizer into Nigeria through NASENI. So right now we're setting up 2 production lines. One is going to be in Kano, and probably one is going to be in Nasarawa. We've sent 10 engineers, so we're going to send 10 more engineers to learn how to fabricate the entire equipment. What's more interesting to me about the coal fertilizer project, it's a very good example of how NASENI is now working in partnership with other stakeholders. So we've got Ministry of Agriculture, which we're signing an MOU with them, ready to place order for the coal fertilizer. So it means you have the demand side covered. And then we've got the private sector that we partnered with to handle the factory operations. So you have the operations and management covered. But then we also have the academia. So we hired the Center for Drought and Agriculture in Bayero University, Kano. They're currently doing field trials of the fertilizer in 6 geopolitical zones with 12 different types of crops. So you have the academia, you have the MDS, you have the private sector, but you have NASENI sitting right at the center coordinating these 3 different stakeholders. And then you've got the people that we are training through the research. So master students are working on the field trials. And you've got the 10 people that are going for the training. And most of those people, when they finish, they are going to have jobs available for them. So you're solving job issues, you're bringing technology, you're doing local production. It's quite an amazing project that we're very happy about.
Very good. Halima, I think this is fantastic.
It's fantastic answer.
So, I don't know if you would say 1 or 2 things concerning these 2 concepts, go-to technology transfer and its adoption by the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that question. That's a good question. So you have technology transfer, you have adaptation, or adaptation, we also call it domestication or localization, right? So one of the things, I think at the conceptualization of NASENI, Nigeria saw what happened in Asia, so like in India and South Korea, and that's exactly what happened in those places. There was a lot of technology transfer from Europe and North America into those countries, and that's how they were able to industrialize, and that's how they were able to grow. But you're not just transferring technology, because the technology that works in India might not necessarily work in Nigeria. You need to make sure it's adapted to the Nigerian market. So NASENI is not just the go-to agency, but it's actually the only agency that is mandated to do this work. So the whole design of NASENI is to go around the world, find some of the best technologies that Nigeria needs, and then try to do deals with companies that own that technology and have a win-win situation that will then incentivize them to come to Nigeria and then train Nigerians on that technology and then adapt it to the Nigerian market and then commercialize it and do mass production. So it's sort of the policy around import substitution. So government is one of the big entities that spends a lot of money in Nigeria, right? So it's a big chunk of economic spending. So you have a lot of MDAs that do projects, and then there's a lot of importation of goods. So instead of importing those goods and all of the capital live in Nigeria, what NASENI does is to say, okay, let's get you a company that will not just ship these products to Nigeria, but probably get some of that capital to remain in Nigeria by doing some assembly work first and hiring some Nigerians and giving them jobs. And then we charted a pathway towards how you then start producing some components, and up to the stage where you could produce 60% of products. So I think we're now, with the EVC, we are really positioned to do that, and we have done some very good projects because we're able to move fast, and we were able to do things very professionally.
All this conversation about technology transfer, just reminds me of all the dormant factories across Nigeria, especially in Lagos and Kaduna. These were all one product of technology transfer, you could say that, right? So how is NASENI going to take the concept of technology transfer and adoption a step further to ensure that these factories are not only utilized, but they thrive in today's tech-driven landscape in Nigeria, and also, to avoid the Nigerian factor in business?
That's a good question, and I think it goes beyond just technology transfer and adaptation. It also involves, business practices and business ethics, really complying with the regulatory, requirements. So, and I think the model that we see coming up right now from within NASENI, which we think is going to be the model that will probably be adopted in Nigeria if it works, is to have, that kind of entity where you have the different players. So the government all alone by itself could not do something. And the private sector, if you leave it to itself 100%, then you have problems. But then you have some kind of collaboration between the government, the public, and the private sector, then it works. And a good example is the LNG model, right? So it's one of the most successful companies in Nigeria, and the government owns substantial percentage, but in the company, but most percentage, most ownership is from the private sector. So the government, being part of the company, will have an oversight and will make sure things are complied to, and nothing is done that is illegal. While the private sector, which should own vast majority of the equity, will now drive the process and make sure there's no intervention or interference from the government sector. I think those are, for most of the collaborations we're structuring, that's the model we're using. So NASENI keeps a little bit of equity in those SPVs we're setting up to keep oversight and make sure those businesses keep thriving, while the private sector runs and manages everything day to day. But let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about the agreement, the memorandum of understanding, MOUs signed by so many companies, locally and international. Sir, of recent, you talked about lithium battery and how we're going to bring down the company to Nigeria. And an average listener would like to know the economic importance of bringing this lithium battery production to Nigeria.
So I think that's another good example of what NASENI is doing in terms of that public-private collaboration. So for the lithium batteries, we have a company in China called LEMI. What they do is they do lithium batteries. So we also have an MOU with Rural Electrification Agency, RIA, which is a big buyer of lithium batteries. So normally, RIA would have just gone to China and placed orders for these batteries from any company. So what we say is, come into collaboration with NASENI, and we signed an MOU with RIA, and then we say, okay, let's find a partner that could not just import those batteries, but will now look at transferring technology and local production. And quite interestingly, we found LEMI that has met both our requirements, both NASENI's and RIA's requirements. And then we went into tripartite partnership between LEMI, RIA, and NASENI. And right now, we are sending a team to China to go and do a factory inspection of LEMI's facilities in China, to come back to us with a report to say that, okay, these guys, we could go into this collaboration. They have the technical know-how. We're looking at the Lagos Free Trade Zone for them to set up the first phase of the project, which is going to cost about $30 million. So essentially, that's going to be just piking the batteries. So you could just imagine how many people we are going to employ, because it's a very tall order to just be piking batteries. So you have reduced the capital flight now by assembly. But the next phase is going to be $120 million expansion, which will involve full production of the lithium batteries. So then it means we are going to use the lithium mineral resources we have in Nasarawa, and I'm sure you've heard the Nasarawa state governor recently visited NASENI, and he's very excited about supporting that project. So in phase 2, then substantial part of that capital is going to stay in Nigeria, because you're going to buy the raw material in Nigeria, so it means jobs for the mining sector. Then you're going to have the more manufacturing, not just assembly, but a full manufacture of the batteries. So it's a project that I think the EVC is very excited about as well.
Remarkable effort, Halima. I think with this, Nigeria should be assured that our economic will be improved and job opportunity will be
Of course. It's going to have like a ripple effect, trickling down.
For the sake of emphasis, sir, what do you have to say about what we have put in place to improve the Nigerian economic setting?
Wow, that's a very good question. So I think there are a lot of projects in the pipeline, and I don't think this medium is going to be enough for us to exhaust those projects. But I think the top 3 things that are very important, especially to the president, you have food security, you have security itself, and then you have energy, and then we have a lot of projects in the pipeline around that. So starting with security, we are discussing with DICOM to set up a factory that will lead to local production of some arms and ammunition. So there's a lot of money that's exported, for importation of this product, and because of the delay that you have due to the global war crisis, that affects the security agencies' response to security threats. If this project comes into fruition, then what you're going to start seeing is that Nigeria is going to save a lot of capital for importing some of those products, and there will be significant improvement in the national security. So not just the economy, but the security. And then you have the Caverton relationship, which has to do with drones. So we've seen this amazing drone technology that allows monitoring of borders, security, areas with security threats. So the drones fly and you don't even see them, and they send in a very good high footage, security report. And our security agents are excited about this project. So we're looking at partnering with Caverton to start local production of those drones and some other projects. And you have projects around energy. So you have the Portland Gas Limited, which we already signed the joint venture agreement, not just the MOU. So we're in the process of setting up the SPV. So we're reverse engineering the kits, all the equipment you need for the CNG cars that the president is pushing for. So we're trying to set up a station here in Jai, Abuja. Just so many projects, I think, that want to contribute significantly to the economy of Nigeria. We're doing so many things at the same time. It's very difficult to keep track and assess how much are they actually going to contribute. But we think very soon, by the end of the year, when we take stock of what we have done so far, I think we will have numbers of how much we're actually going to impact the Nigerian economy.
Yes, and I think it's clear that NASENI's initiative will not only impact, the technology and innovation sector, but it will be felt across the nation, by the average Nigerian. So as we wrap it up in this episode, let me remind you of a powerful quote by John F. Kennedy that was echoed by our EVC. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Yes, absolutely, Halima. This quote perfectly kind of captures the NASENI's proactiveness, as in using the opportunities for innovation and progress. It's about embracing difficult and striving for greatness. And of course, if you mirror the commitment in NASENI, we'll be able to start putting things in order as Nigeria.
Thank you once again, Engineer Anas Balarabe Yazid, for your enlightening conversation. It was truly there. I think there are loads of takeaways in this episode, and I hope that our listeners have learned a thing or two. And to our esteemed listeners, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to share this episode with your loved ones. And of course, keep up with us for more discussions. Thank you very much. I am your host, Halima Haruna Gintal.
And Comrade Al-Hassan Nasser, sincerely thank you for your time. Till we meet again in the next episode. Goodbye for now.
NASENI Window. NASENI Window. NASENI Window.